Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, yesterday, the Russian FSB announced that it had arrested a reporter from the Wall Street Journal. His name is Evan Gershkovich. It was in Ekaterinburg, and he had lived in Russia for some 6 years. He'd worked for a number of media outlets before he began working at the Wall Street Journal, only in 2022. And
his parents were born in the Soviet Union.
Exactly, that's what I was going to. His parents were born in the Soviet Union, though he himself was born in New Jersey. He's a fluent Russian speaker. Actually, the media are full of indignation. However, we obviously don't know much about what this is really. He's only just been arrested. We haven't seen any of the documents or whatever. But the response from the U.S. media and the U.S. administration was as you would expect. So I want to just show you a couple of things, and then we can see how strange this is. So here, this was the press release from the FSB, which said, "We stopped the illegal activities of the U.S. citizen Evan Gershkovich." And then it says, "It was established that Gershkovich, acting on the instructions of the American side, collected information constituting a state secret about the activities of one of the enterprises of the Russian military-industrial complex. While trying to obtain secret information, the foreigner was detained in Ekaterinburg."
A city in which has a lot of military installations.
Exactly, and it's a long way from Moscow. I mean, I think it's some
900 miles.
900 miles. So it's a long way. So the investigation department of the FSB of Russia initiated a criminal case against the U.S. citizen, and so on. So that's the statement, and then, of course, naturally, the U.S. media went into overdrive, much as they did when Brittany Griner, the American basketball star, was arrested by bringing drugs into the country. And I want to show you the editorial in the Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal. It's a famous newspaper, global newspaper. However, it's owned by Rupert Murdoch, and as such, it's a pretty, very much the voice of conservatism, Inc. Kind of a
jingoism.
Yeah, it's kind of an apparat, which is conservative establishment, tax cuts, or unrestricted immigration, deregulation, and endless wars. It's a very familiar package.
And very, very pro-NATO. Very pro-NATO.
Very pro-NATO, and of course, wildly anti-Russian. And so here it is. Russia's arrest of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich escalates the Kremlin's habit of taking Americans hostage, and it's more evidence that Russia is divorcing itself from the community of civilized nations. President Vladimir Putin is now responsible for Mr. Gershkovich's health and safety, and the Biden administration has an obligation to press for his release. Now, the thing that's very striking right away is that he's arrested 800 miles from Moscow. In this, as you said, there are lots of factories there producing military hardware. Evidently, he was doing some investigation, talking to various people and so on. Now, given that there's a war on, given the active involvement of the United States in a war, the question then arises, why did the Wall Street Journal put one of its reporters essentially in harm's way? I mean, the Wall Street Journal had to, if he was there on assignment from the Wall Street Journal working on a story, they are responsible for, the calamity that has fallen on their reporter. They should have known there's a war on. You don't just go off and start, investigations or whatever you were doing where there are these military factories. So, they can bluster, how they like, but the onus is on the Wall Street Journal management that sent him to cover this. So the journal denies the allegation, which is dubious on its face. The government closely monitors foreign reporters in Russia, and Mr. Gershkovich has worked there for years. The FSB could have expelled him long ago if it really believed he's a spy. Well,
that last sentence doesn't really make any sense. Okay.
Exactly. Why would you expel him? You see, you only expel diplomats because diplomats enjoy diplomatic immunity. You don't expel spies. I mean, if you catch someone spying, you prosecute. I mean, that's the point. I mean, yeah, which is why countries use diplomats as cover for spying, because if they get caught, the worst that happens is they get expelled because they enjoy immunity. But anyone else, why would you expel them? You want to find out the network of spies. I mean, we're just simply talking about from the Russian point of view. We don't know what the nature of anything is, but we just simply say, well, if they thought he was a spy, they could have expelled him. Why should there's no obligation on them to expel him? They want to know what the espionage network is, such as it is.
Well, and also the following the FSB's press release, we have Kremlin officials saying that are familiar with the case that he was caught red-handed. I'm sure we're going to be shown that red-handed, what that means. Okay, that means passing a memory stick or a photograph, video, something like that. Again, I don't see them doing this on a frivolous basis whatsoever. Okay, I don't see what they get out of it. Okay, right. With this kind of press, obviously, but they take it very, very seriously, and it's the Wall Street Journal's fault. Okay,
right? I mean, no, I think the really important point. It's their fault because there is a war on, and America is very actively involved, and Russia has continually warned that America is essentially waging a proxy war against us and using Ukraine to wage war against us. Now, when you're doing something like that, you don't just go off, toddle off and start, doing your normal investigation in wartime. I mean, that's nuts. So whether, so if the journal is going to say, oh, he was there on a reporting assignment for us, then it's on you. It's you who have acted completely responsibly, because he isn't going to be released anytime soon.
Oh, basically, Ivan, you're going to be here for a long time.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. The U.S. and its allies are waging a war on Russia. Why should Russia be in a mood to take clemency and sympathy? They won't. Okay. No. Now, again, we don't see, the public will be presented the evidence during his trial, because there will be a trial. Okay. And I'll tell everyone, let me think here. What are the chances he'll be convicted? About 100%.
Yeah, I think so. I think
because they won't bring it to trial unless they get a conviction. That's how it works here. That's you can agree with it or disagree with it, but that's how it works.
Right. That's right. So it says the timing of the arrest looks like a calculated provocation to embarrass the U.S. and intimidate the foreign press still working in Russia. Why bother? I mean, things are already bad enough. Why add anything else? I mean, it's like, I mean, you've already said we're not, we're kind of withdrawing our participation in the New START treaty. You're already saying we're very close to a nuclear confrontation. Why do you need anything else? I mean, it's like, you don't need anything provocative. There's already enough provocative fires to go around. It says the Kremlin has cowed domestic reporting in Russia, so foreign correspondents are the last independent sources of news. Mr. Gershkovich's arrest comes days after his byline was on revealing and widely read dispatch documenting the decline of the Russian economy. The Kremlin doesn't want the truth told. We can imagine, imagine a Russian reporter hanging around, various military bases or factories producing ammo, and how would the Wall Street Journal respond if a Russian reporter were arrested for snooping around American factories producing weaponry? I would say, good. Finally we're teaching Putin a lesson. So
Well, I've read some of these because when I learned of the arrest yesterday, I tried to find some of his articles, which are online, and it's very much at odds with what global economists have said about the Russian economy,
right.
Except for Ivan's got it right, the only one out there.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, go on.
There's very one-sided, propaganda tripe is what we expect from the Wall Street Journal when it comes to Russia.
Exactly. The Wall Street Journal has been notoriously absolutely rabid on Russia. Very, even it's more rabid and one-sided than the New York Times and Washington Post, if that's possible. And then the arrest could also be a response to charges brought last week by the U.S. Justice Department against Sergei Vladimirov Cherkasov. Now, this is kind of really bizarre because this is a guy who went to he's a Russian. He went to the Netherlands. Apparently, he got an internship at the ICC, the International Criminal Court. The Dutch authorities arrested him. They sent him back to Brazil, and then the Brazilians arrested him and imprisoned him for faking documents. But now the U.S. Justice Department has issued an indictment claiming he's a Russian spy. But let's say he's a
fraudster. Okay,
he's a fraudster. But the point is that it doesn't make any sense, because if the Russians want him back, because the Russians say we have our own arrest warrant, we want him. He's committed fraud in Russia. So if Russia wants him back, then the best way of getting him back is from the Brazilians. They have quite good relations with Brazil, and you try to lean on Brazil to get him back by arresting the Wall Street Journal reporter. That doesn't do anything for the Russians, because then that only would encourage Cherkasov to be transferred to the United States, because then they say, hey, if there's a swap going, then let the Americans have him, and then the Americans can swap Cherkasov for Gershkovich. But it doesn't make any sense for the Russians to use this, because they can get to Brazil, if they can, through other means. Why arrest an American journalist if you want to lean on Brazil?
Well, in this case, a spy versus a fraudster, it's not of equal value. I don't think the Russians would see it that way.
I don't think so at all. I don't think so at all. They said the Russian national was charged with various fraud offenses and being an agent of a foreign power. And they said, Mr. Putin often takes hostages with the goal of exchanging them later for Russians who have committed crimes in the U.S.
Griner admitted her guilt. She wasn't taken hostage.
Right. And no one has actually denied that she was bringing drugs into the into Russia. And of course, the media presented, these are just minor drug charges. Well, you may think they're minor, but most countries in the world don't think that that's minor. You can disagree with their policy on drugs, but they don't consider it minor. Bringing drugs into a country is, many states really take a strong exception to bringing drugs in. So, just like, it's just a minor drug.
Zero tolerance.
Yeah,
zero
tolerance. And many countries feel very, very strongly about drugs. Because drugs have had a devastating effect. I mean, in Russia, they've had very serious problems with drugs. Turkey as well. Serious problems. So they take strong exception to foreigners bringing drugs into the country. And then it says the brazen arrest of an American journalist shows the declining ability of the U.S. to deter assaults on its citizens. The Biden administration on Thursday condemned the detention of Mr. Gershkovich, and we at the Journal are grateful for that. But it's fair to ask why Mr. Putin believes he can snatch Americans and come out ahead. And snatching, grabbing, how do you know any of this? I mean, it's like, just like,
everybody, let me put this into context. Okay. There aren't a lot of Americans that I know in Moscow. There are some, and we occasionally, very rarely, but occasionally meet up. No one I know over the years have said, I'm worried that I'm being followed. They're listening to my, and nobody thinks that, okay? Because none of them are going to military industrial towns, meeting with people and writing articles. And obviously this journalist has a very negative disposition towards Russia. The people I know have good, well-paying jobs, in most cases, families. So
right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you're doing something like this, and in time of war, then you're taking your life in your hands. Now, and the Journal and News Corp or Rupert Murdoch, they cannot escape responsibility for this, because if they're going to go with the story, hey, he was working on an assignment for us, then you have to be responsible as to why on earth did you put this person in harm's way. I mean, you did this. You sent this person. You sent him in harm's way. In a time of war, and he's poking around in a military industrial town. That's absolutely irresponsibility.
And in the vast majority of the cases of immigrants that left the Soviet Union, went to America, went to the West, their children are intensely anti-Russian. Right. For the vast majority of them are, okay? Yeah. And I believe me, I have met some of them, okay? Yeah. And for them, doing harm to Russia, its reputation, if it's true or not, doesn't matter. It's a goal worthy of embracing. Okay.
Yeah, that's
well, I mean, his journalism proves that. Okay.
No, I think that's right. And as we've mentioned before, there's an interesting juxtaposition between those Soviet citizens who went to the United States and those who went to Israel. The ones who went to Israel don't have that hostility towards Russia. In fact, they kind of the opposite. They have some nostalgic feeling for the country they left behind. But the ones who went to the United States are absolutely, full of loathing for Russia. And it's always, and
a lot of them were born in America.
Oh yeah, like this guy, is born in America, and they just filled with this hatred. And then it says, last year, Russia and the U.S. traded basketball player Brittany Griner, whom Russia had arrested on a minor drug charge. Yeah, but it's a minor. Yeah, you think it's minor. Russia doesn't think it's minor. I mean, no one's saying it's minor. I mean, you can't say, oh, well, they just did it because this was a frivolous thing. They just wanted a spot. No, this was a serious business.
Oh. No, George, they just don't like tall women. Okay?
That's right, yeah. No, that's right. For Victor Boot, who was serving a 25-year sentence in Illinois for conspiring to kill Americans and selling weapons to a terror group. We talked about Victor Boot. He's a transporter. He had a transport aircraft, and he was delivering everything.
And he was good at it.
He was good at it, but basically
really good at it.
And doing it for everyone. Basically, he was transporting goods for Americans. He was for the United Nations. He was they used, essentially, he was a freelancer who was delivering for all sides. The prisoner swap was widely perceived as favoring Moscow, which valued Mr. Boot highly, while Mr. Biden didn't insist. Well, on Russia also. Well, this is the point. How do you insist? What do you do? I mean, you threaten to beat up Lavrov. I mean, what do you do? Well, he didn't insist. Well, they did insist, and Russia said no. I mean, so Russia said, you want Griner, you can have Griner, but you're not going to get Whelan. And so, well, he didn't insist, and do what?
Griner was guilty. She admitted her guilt. Okay, but Boot, he was a freelancer that worked for the West, the East, the North, South, and everybody in between. Right, okay. Right. So I don't see, that the Russians got the better end of the job. They freed an innocent man.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Russia has held Mr. Whelan, a former Marine, on espionage charges since 2018. Recently, 2 Russian planes took down a U.S. drone flying in international airspace, and U.S. did nothing in response. what's the plan here? Russia's doing in response. I mean, you bomb Russia, okay, but I don't, like US did nothing in response. Yeah, I mean, you were flying it above the Black Sea. You was 50 miles from Sevastopol. Again, there's a war on. You're flying without your transponder on. The US did nothing in response. No, I mean, it shouldn't have been there, but it was go.
Well, George, so with the downing of the American drone, it was the first thought that came to your mind Paul Whelan?
No, it was it was not. But I think they're just trying to show how wimpy and weak the Biden administration is. So apparently, the Wall Street Journal editorial writers, not one of whom has heard a shot fired in anger. I mean, they're always belligerent. Not one has served a day in the military. And they're going to get tough. You're going to start, blowing up things in Russia. So,
well, the Wall Street Journal should learn. They don't seem to have a learning capacity. Don't send your journalists into a threatening environment in which they have no immunity. Okay, that's common sense, George. Common sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And then thuggish leaders keep doing thuggish things if they think they will pay no price. You've already, how many, these rounds of sanctions, you keep imposing these rounds of sanctions. I pay no price. What's the price? What's the plan here? And the Biden administration will have to consider diplomatic and political escalation, expelling Russia's ambassador to the US, as well as all Russian journalists working here would be the minimum to expect. Oh, expelling the Russian ambassador, that would be the minimum to expect. That's proportionate. The US government's first duty is to protect its citizens, and too many governments now believe they can arrest and imprison Americans with impunity. Well, yeah, they can if Americans are engaged in activities that governments think jeopardize their security. So a lot of hot air, a lot of bluster doing this, but the onus is on you. What the hell did you think you were doing sending him to this town?
Well, see, George, I mean, there's going to be more diplomatic, political, and what we talk a lot about, military escalation. Would you be in the mood to exchange people?
No, that's the point.
No, I wouldn't either.
No, that's right. But in any case, I mean, what we were talking about is that he's not going to be released anytime soon. Well, there's going to be a trial. Then, before you start talking about swaps, there's going to have to be a trial. There's going to have to be a conviction. That's all going to take time. I mean, it ain't going to happen next week.
Yeah. This is going to take a very long time. Everybody, about 4 years ago, I had my briefcase stolen from me, which the police did find. Was very happy. The amount of paperwork that it was generated over that. Yeah. And I didn't get my briefcase back for 6 months because it was evidence. I said, well, you got a picture of it, right? And then, nope, we need it for the trial.
Right.
The amount of paperwork that they generate here still boggles the mind.
Yeah, and no, that's right. And this is a complex case. I mean, the Whelan thing, that 2018. So that's already a long time ago. And and as you say, why would Russia want to go out of its way to affect a swap? I mean, again, back in the days, they talk about the Nicholas Danilov, which was in the 80s. Yeah, but that was at the height of, glasnost, perestroika, the good relations with Reagan. Yeah, they were in the mood to effect a swap, releasing Danilov. They're not in the mood now to do the Americans any favors. So you're going to have to wait for quite a while before they do anything.
And I would imagine the trial will start sometime in autumn.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. They got to get all the ducks in a row and everything. So yeah. So now this is very funny. This is from the New York Times writing about this, and watch how the New York Times kind of makes a little dig at the Journal. It says the Journal recently named a new top editor, Emma Tucker. In 2014, as deputy editor of the Times of London, Ms. Tucker was closely involved in an episode involving two correspondents who had been kidnapped and detained in Syria. One of the journalists, Anthony Lloyd, was shot twice in the leg, and the other, the photographer Jack Hill, was beaten up before the men were able to escape. Now, the Times is really kind of getting a dig here at the Journal. This is the same woman who was kind of essentially put two of her reporters in harm's way in Syria. One of them was shot twice in the leg, and the other one was beaten up before they were able to escape. In other words, they were allowed to go. So in other words, they're saying, hey, you have a reputation of not protecting your journalists or putting your journalists in harm's way. So that's the solidarity that you get from other media outlets. Even though, of course, the Times, bashing Putin and so on, but they have to get this little dig in at the Wall Street Journal. So anyway, that's we're going to obviously watch this, but as we discussed, nothing much is going to happen here for a while. And any hope the Biden administration that, hey, we can do a quick swap, nah, not going to happen. So
it's a pity. I suppose for I call them repats. They come back. Okay, a lot of them have a mission, are on a mission, and all this. It's all cool,
Yeah.
No, it's really sad. Okay, and I've watched from a distance, and then, like I just gave an example, up close, the judicial system. It's very thorough. It's very, very slow. Okay.
Yeah.
And they don't have the same kind of defendants advocacy that we would see like in the United States. Okay. It's called the criminal code. It's not an adversarial type system. It's the criminal code, and they follow it in such a rigorous way. And so, I mean, with the Pussy Riot verdict, it was longer than War and Peace. Okay, that's how thorough they are.
Yeah. No, that's right. And again, I mean, it's they can do favors, but only if they get some favor in return. Since the Americans haven't really done any favors for the Russians, I can't see them doing anything at all. And this idea that you can swap a kind of a fraudster who in any case isn't even in American custody, so that whole question doesn't even arise. So it just makes no sense. But they want to say, oh yeah, the Russians are obviously planning, they want to swap what? Swap someone who's not even in American custody.
Could you imagine the potential mid-level conversation? Maybe we could talk about prisoner exchange. That I'd like to talk about the Nord Stream 2 pipelines first. Can we go there? Would that be all right with you? Because it's what we want to talk about. We're tired of what you want to talk about.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. That's always the case, and particularly as we had that vote this week in the UN Security Council, in which Russia, China, and Brazil voted for setting up an independent international commission to investigate what happened to the Nord Stream pipelines, and the rest, the US, UK, France-led bunch, they just abstained. So naturally, there isn't going to be any international commission to investigate. So that's it. You can forget about finding out whatever happened to the pipelines. So
when we all know what happened to the pipelines.
When we all know what happened to the pipelines. So exactly. So the Russians, they're told, hey, that's it. You're not going to find your property. Tough luck, buddy. You're not going to find out what happened. And by the way, you've got to release this journalist for us. Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah, we're in the age of asymmetrical behavior and thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. Good luck to this journalist, but I'm glad you speak Russian. Okay, I might make your time in Russian prisons are awful. Okay.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah, write to your editor. Maybe never assign me to a place like this again. Okay.
Quite. Yeah. Exactly.
All right, everybody. This is The Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Since it is Friday, the great drought has started. I suggest Netflix or whatever you do. Don't drink. That's a
Yeah.
God for.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
I forgot to. That was my introduction to George's live stream next week.
Next, exactly. I mean, drinking, I mean, Peter wants to recommend no drink, so you can follow Peter's advice, no drink. That means you're going to have to do something else to while the hours away. And I don't know if there's anything as much fun as drinking, but nonetheless, follow the advice of the doctor. Don't drink. Anyway, but 3 p.m. Tuesday. Please join me. Come with comments, criticisms, and suggestions. And on the way out the door, remember little buddy, and he too is getting worried about these assignments. Hey, I keep getting, all these assignments. Hey, I know where my assignment is, right in front of that tip jar. He has a point. Too many, assignments rather than the main one. So if you have a few bob in your pocket, please whip him out, dunk him in his tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to contribute, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can work on the technology, and above all, the more we can keep Buddy focused where he needs to be focused. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.